So, your physical therapist may have sent you a self measurement kit to do your own baseline measurements or to do follow up measurements for your arm. This is really important because it allows for early detection of lymphedema and it allows us to track changes in your arm volume with time. And so, your kit will come with three components. The first is the measurement device, so our tape measure. You'll have a white stick. It is important to grab usually just a little piece of tape. If you have that at home, it will make this a little bit easier. And then our marking pencil. And for our kits, that will either be a lipstick pencil and sometimes an eyebrow pencil. That just allows for easy marking on the skin. So because not all patients have the ability to come into the clinic where we use a pyrometer to take measurements because of distance or access reasons, we have these kits that have been validated through research to give us really reliable information that you can do at home yourself. So your physical therapist will walk you through this, but we want you to have a video to reference as you're taking these measurements as well. And then your physical therapist will take those numbers, put it into our system that then allows us to actually calculate an arm volume so that we can compare the size of your left arm to your right arm and make some treatment decisions based on those numbers. So the first thing that you'll need to do is get your pencil. So we're going to actually mark both arms, so it doesn't matter which side that you start with because each side is going to be measured. So what you're going to do is on your pinky finger side, you're going to come down to the wrist where there's a big bump, and that's the bump that we're looking for, okay? So what you want to do is put your finger right on top of that bump. So we're right here, and we're going to bump our finger just off of that bump, and we're going to draw our first line. It's best if you extend the line a little bit. It'll make it easier as we go to measure it. So here's my bump. I dropped right off and I've drawn my first line. So this is going to be the first line that we take. So from there, you're going to get your white stick with your tape, and this is where the tape comes in handy. We're going to lay that stick right at the end of that line, and the tape will just help hold it in place while we draw our next line right at the top of this stick. So sometimes it's easiest to give it a little bit of a mark and then move your stick out of the way to extend that line. So now I have my first two marks done. So I like to always go back and recheck to just confirm that that distance is accurate between there, because this is going to be really important for consistency of these measurements each time. So we're going to repeat that process again, putting our stick right at the end, putting the tape on, marking here. And again, I just like to remove it each time. I find that it's easier than trying to draw on top of it, but if you are able, you certainly can leave that in place. What has to just happen each time is that this white stick fits in there each time between the spaces, okay? On this next one, it's really important that your elbow is straight because you're gonna be crossing the elbow at this point. So again, putting it down and marking. It's typically easiest for you to do this with your arm resting on a surface. I'm kind of just holding it up for you to see, but ideally that arm would be propped onto a surface, which will make this much easier for you and will be more comfortable for your shoulder. So again, each time checking and making sure. If you ever need to erase, make sure that you do that, because again, this is really important for making sure that this is a consistent, reliable way to measure. So we want to end up with 5 total measurements. So I'm going to do one last measurement up the arm a little bit higher. So this process would then be repeated on the other arm as well. You can go through all of the steps on one side and then repeat them on the other, or you can go ahead and mark each side. It really doesn't matter. It's just whatever is easiest for you. I'm just going to show you on one side just for the sake of measurements. So the next piece is to take a look at our tape measure. So it's important to notice that ours is rounded on the edge. That's going to help it sit right on top of the forearm. And you're going to also notice there's a little notch. So we have a plastic tab at the end that slides into place. I will say it doesn't stay if you shake it too much. It will fall back out. So definitely make sure you get it slid all the way in so that it will stay in. And then there's also, you're going to notice a button side and our logo side, okay? And that's going to become important in a minute when we talk about the direction that we're putting this on. But what the button does is when we get this on and we push the button, it's going to cinch that so that it fits snugly around the arm, and then we're going to take the measurement reading, okay? So I find it easiest to go ahead and give yourself some slack. You'll hear the ratcheting noise slide in, and then you're going to slide it onto your first line so that you should see just a little bit of that lip liner or eyebrow pencil poking out towards you. So that's how you know that you're on the correct side, as opposed to having it poking out towards your fingers. So we're going to put it right here. We're going to cinch that button, okay? And this is where it's important to notice. So that logo, when I am on my left side, the logo should be pointing away from you, which means that you should see the button side towards you while you do it on the left side. That's going to switch and change when we switch to the right side. On the right side, the logo should be facing you. The reason for that is because then it allows the measurement that you need to read to be on your thumb as opposed to be around here, which is much more difficult to read. So the measurement will still be correct, you will just have to read on an uncomfortable side, and so that's why we have you switch the logo. The other thing to take note of is our tape measure shows two different numbers. You'll notice there's very big numbers and then there's very small numbers. We do these measurements in centimeters, which means you need the small numbers, okay? So the big numbers are in inches, but our software and program monitors those in centimeters. It allows that number to be more accurate. So we want to talk a little bit about centimeters. So if you look between the 10 and the 11, the reason this becomes more accurate is there's exactly 10 little dashes between them, and there's a taller line in the middle that is the 5 mark. So when you look at this, if you are at 10 and then it's 4 little dashes past, you'll tell your physical therapist that that number is 10.4. Or if it comes to the 5, so the sort of halfway mark, it was 10.5, we would have 10.6, 10.7, 10.8, 10.9, and then 11. So you'll notice that just allows us a much more precision in these measurements than inches allow for us to have. And so that's the reason why we use those instead of the inches. So I know they're small to read, but it really makes a difference in the reliability of these numbers, so it's important to do. So when we go again to that first one, remember I'm coming right on to where I can just see towards me this peeking out. And so on this side, we don't want to see any of that liner poking out. It should all be towards you, okay? So once I've cinched it, remember that I have done this incorrectly and the logo should be facing you. And that's why it matters. So that logo is facing out. And so I am looking at the button. Now I'm going to look in on the thumb side. So what I'm looking for when I look at the side is you can choose what mark you read it on. And so what I mean there is sometimes patients say, should I read right where it's on top of the plastic? Should I read where it's just off the plastic? And the answer is it doesn't matter as long as you do the exact same thing every time. So whatever is an easier number for you to read, the most important part is that you don't switch back and forth. So whatever you decide, if you want to decide right where it curves around the edge of the plastic is the number you want to read, or right where it enters into the tape measure is what you want to read, either is fine. Just do the same thing every time. Because really what we're looking on these numbers is the difference between side to side, and so as long as you're consistent, we'll be good. Okay, so in my particular case, I sit right on 16 centimeters, and so that would be the measurement for my very first wrist measurement. So either on your form that you have, you're gonna write that down, or if you're with your physical therapist, you would tell them that is 16 exactly. Typically, you're gonna have a point something, okay? So then you have a couple of different options. You can just twist just a little and you'll notice that peg's gonna fall right out, or you can just take it off, either way. But I think it's easiest if you pull it out again to make it larger. Again, we're gonna come up to that next spot on the arm and we're gonna cinch here. Now, here's an important thing to remember. We want that tape measure to be straight around in a circle. We don't want it at an angle like it is here. That's not gonna give us a consistent measurement, okay? So make sure that when you do that squeeze, we go right around in a straight line, okay? Again, I should see that liner just peeking out towards me so that I know that I'm on the correct side. I'm gonna read in at the thumb side, and for me, I am sitting at 19.8 on this one. So again, I'm past the 19. and it's notched all the way until that 9th one, so I can see the 20 poking out. That's how I read that measurement. So again, you can either twist or you can pull down and move it up to the next top one. So whatever ends up being easiest for you. Again, that number is poking out. I'm making sure that that stays nice and straight as it comes around. And then I'm going to read the next measurement again. So each time I'm looking in at the thumb side to see that measurement, I'm going to repeat this process all the way up the arm. You may have your physical therapist ask you to repeat a couple of numbers. We're typically looking for a consistency of the arm. So if we see anything that looks out of the normal, we may have you repeat it. Or if we see a significant difference from one arm to the other at a particular location, we may have you repeat those as well. You would then repeat the process again, like I said before, on the other arm. Again, same thing happens. We're going to take that bump and we're going to come just off of it. So I like to put my finger right on the top of it, come right down, and that's where that first line is drawn. And again, repeating that process where that stick comes right down and then the tape. Now, it's also good to remember that this is exactly 10 centimeters. So that means if you lose this stick, please let us know. Don't just guess on one, because that, again, is also important for the reliability of these numbers. So we would mark all of these all the way up the arm. The only difference when you switch to the right arm is that now the logo is going to be facing you instead. So instead of looking at the button like we were before, now you should see the logo. So from your end, you're seeing that button, but all I've done is turn it around. But again, the only thing is it allows you to see it on the wrist side to just make this a little bit easier. So if you ever do something on that first measurement and you're getting something in the single digits, you need to turn the tape measure around. So if I were to flip this the other way, and same thing, cinch right here, this is sitting right at 5 centimeters. So if you are ever a single digit, the odds are you're just backwards. Okay, so you're gonna turn it around and just repeat the process, okay? So for here on this side, I'm at 16.4 on this side, and my right side is my dominant side, so I would expect to see it a little bit larger there. So again, you would repeat all 5 of those measurements all the way up the arm, and then we'll input those for you to give you some information that will tell us about the volume in your arms, if we need to make any treatment changes, or start any treatment if we have any concerns about lymphedema.